Welcome to the Kissing Spine podcast. How nice of you to join. In this podcast, I discuss several topics around kissing spine, like what kissing spine is, the different medical treatments, the function of different body parts, functional and dysfunctional training techniques, saddle fit, and a whole lot more. All put together to help you support your horse with the kissing spine. I wish you a lot of fun listening, and if you like this podcast, make sure to become a subscriber so you won't miss any of my episodes. Welcome to the third episode of the Kissing Spine podcast. In this episode, I want to talk about what kissing spine is, and I am thrilled that you're here, especially since now I can really make an episode that's more about kissing spine itself. My intention is to keep the podcast rather short and easy to listen to. This way I can be quite specific and clear without including too many extras that can make everything even more confusing than kissing spine can already be. So let's get started. The body of the horse is a very complex system of muscles, ligaments, tendons, bones, skin, organs, nerves, and of course the supercomputer we call the brain that gives directions to all of this. I honestly have a certain awe for the body. The way it's capable to heal itself, to adjust to different circumstances, and how everything is connected in a certain way is just something so complicated. It just fascinates me. But even how such a big animal, for example, can feel a fly on the skin and then the skin reacts upon it. It's just such an indication how big the animal is still, how sensitive it is, and how that brain knows exactly what to do and what signal to give, and that the body just does what it needs to do to get rid of that one fly. So I'm not going to talk about the whole body of the horse because that would make this a very long podcast, and I'm not going to do that to you. I just want to take a thorough look at the back of the horse. So to start with the back of the horse, you have the spinal column. And through this column, the nerves go from the brain all the way to the hooves of the hind legs. So that is a very, very long road that these nerves have to go all the way from the brain, all the way to the down last tiny little bit part of the horse. So, and all this highway of signals goes through the spinal column. And alongside the spinal columns lie the muscles that support the movement of the body, because that's basically what muscles do. They contract and release. That makes movement of the body possible. So then you have the natural build of the horse that we call conformation. And this conformation can vary wildly per horse. So Arabian Thoroughbred basically has a different conformation than a Dutch Warmblood, which is bred for dressage, for example. So the alignment of the different bones are just different. And that is also something that we see in the spine. So there's a natural bend from left to right, or left or right. So you have a left bent horse or a right bent horse. But you also have the hollowness into which the spine collapses down. And if nothing is being done with the horse, you will even notice that how the spine is formed will change along when the horse is aging. So the older the horse becomes, the more mature the body will become. There's a very different conformation in a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old if you look at the same horse, even when it's not being trained. The muscles of the horse have a big impact on how they support the spine. So a horse with strong abdominal muscles and a good developed back muscles will have a less hollow spine than one that's less developed. And you can imagine that if you would sit on a horse with a spine that's already quite hollow, gravity will start doing its job by pushing the spine down even more with the rate of the rider if he would sit on top of it. And the bones where the spines are made of are sort of formed in shackles. And these shackles we call vertebrae. And these vertebrae are hollow, so through that hollowness, through that hole in the middle, that's where the nerves go through. And imagine a chain necklace in which you move one shackle, and then you will notice that then the next shackle will follow, and the next shackle will follow, and the next shackle will follow. And this is possible because these shackles are connected together. And that's the same with vertebrae. They are connected to, they're sort of clicked into each other and then connected with tissue that we call ligaments. They're sort of rubber bands that are a little bit elastic, and they hold these shackles together. So if you would move one side of the spine with the shackle and you'll move it enough, all the other shackles of the vertebrae will follow that movement along. On top of these vertebrae, which are all shackles, are fins that we call dorsals. They have more technical terms, but I will not tire you with them. And kissing spine is simply that the spine has become hollow enough that these dorsals start to touch each other. So you can imagine that if that back is being dropped, so that spine is becoming hollow and going more down, that the top side of these vertebrae are getting closer together. Well, and if they can become close enough, these dorsals, so the top fins of these vertebrae, are going to touch each other. And in movement, this would also cause rubbing against each other. Well, bone on bone are not meant to move. They're not meant to rub. So around the bone, there's a little thing like a layer of protection. And if this rubbing starts, this layer starts to inflame. And if nothing is being done, or if the horse is being ridden without the back and abdominal muscles being engaged, this rubbing will only become worse. And there are multiple reasons why horses can get a kissing spine, which I will leave for our next podcast, same as symptoms and at different degrees. So make sure to subscribe so you won't miss the next one. But there are the reasons why horses get a kissing spine vary very differently. But what you can imagine that if these inflammations and the rubbing itself are not being treated and are going to stay there, that this can become very painful for the horse. And due to the several vertebrae not being ideally aligned, a horse can also get nerve issues. Because if there's we would say in Dutch a kink in the cable. So if the cables of the nerves cannot really flow through the spine, a horse will get issues with the connection from the brain all the way to the hind side of the horse. In other words, kissing spine can cause some really serious back pain and body issues. And if you don't take proper care of it to get rid of it, the horse will be permanently in discomfort. And I'm still in the assumption that that is something that most people do not want for their horses. So this is very basically explained what kissing spine is. Do you want to know more about kissing spine? Then make sure to stay tuned for the next podcast in which I will discuss the symptoms of kissing spine. For now, I want to thank you very much for listening, and hopefully you will be there for the next episode. I would like to thank you again for listening to this podcast. If you think that this podcast is interesting to someone else, please share it on social media so others can find it too. This way we can create more awareness about what the options are with a kissing spine horse.